Assassination Classroom, episode 3. Another picked flower. You're in charge of what I let you be in charge of, because I can move it Mach 20, among other gifts. No, he's too deferential. He also really wants to be involved, huh? This is not a job to him. Not with that attitude. Yeah, there's definitely, like I said, a Mr. Miyagi thing happening with the regular school stuff. How you do one thing is how you do anything, they say. Okay, let's see what you got. Open-minded about this character. Oh, you can't even kill a human? Also great teaching, the demonstration. See where you are on this scale? Do you see how now what I'm saying actually might make some sense? They just learned like 10 hours worth of material by falling to the ground. He likes like doing things on the floor in sand. This is so fun. This is so fun. Where was my assassination classroom? Yeah, he'll probably end up loving the students too. No, the situation was sort of dubious at first. Not that he has a lot of choice. Whereas like, I hope you kids can do what I can't. To sit by and let other people take responsibility for the fate of the world feels a bit weak. I'll admit the philosophy he's prescribing here is something I've come around to. I love trying to skip steps. I love trying to pretend I'm better than I am. Like they said in the Haikyuu movie, sometimes the hardest road is actually the easiest road. If you just do all the stuff you know you have to do, in a lot of cases, you end up getting there faster and you were deluding yourself from the beginning about how quickly you could hack the thing. Not that that isn't a useful skill, but it has to sort of like meet the road. You can't pretend it's working. And if you don't already have a massive insight and it's not paying off, probably should go back to the basics. And actually, in a lot of cases, it is true. You will break the rules when you get to the innovation phase, but you kind of have to have a good foundation in the basics in order to start breaking the rules in a way that's productive. The truth about a lot of creative fields that I think is not emphasized enough is that it's not just you, it's an interplay of just so many things. So there is you and your skill set, and then there's the phenomena you're applying it to, but also the phenomena is always changing. So it's not just use this tool for this phenomena. It's like have these tools and then match the phenomena. To Haikyuu's point, if you're so busy worrying about the execution of the various tools, then you probably don't have enough resources to confront the landscape in real time. That interplay also is why it's really hard to give advice sometimes in fields. Let's say I have reasonable amount of success in a thing and somebody asks me for advice on how to do the thing. I can't tell them to do what I did because there are so many things that went into that, things very specific to me and my mindset that I can't give them, I can't replicate, and I wouldn't even recommend. Like I frequently get asked about investing and it's like, I know how I would invest. I don't know how you should invest. It's not the same thing. And I often think making the best move in those things means going against the orthodoxy in those things. But also I understand the orthodoxy to a sufficient degree. So I know I'm opposing the orthodoxy and I'm doing that deliberately, but then there will be times when the orthodoxy makes more sense. And I know the landscape and know the basics enough that I trust myself to get that right enough of the time. Oh, it's you. It's the wild card kid, the Kiriyama. His name is Karma? It's kind of like Kiriyama. What is the theory of savage youth? You do wonder sometimes why it always has to be teens and kids. I guess it's just, you know, the development, also the rawness, the raw passion and pain of being a teenager, which turns out is a lot like the passion and pain of an adult, just with less responsibility. But yeah, it's more raw. Episode 3, Karma time. At least the roof is low, so you might not damage the cresta all that much. What'd he do? He seems too normal, and that gives away his psychopathy. Oh. He's the first one to touch him. That's impressive. You just became top student. Yeah, that's big. It does seem like the best way to kill him would be a psychological approach. Maybe he was just too cool for school. That's why they suspended him. Or it's violent behavior. That's a vicious cycle, man. How do they know the deadly weapons part? They weren't in this assassination classroom before. I feel there is a great humbling coming this episode. He's had a near-death experience. I don't think that's it. I think quiz time is the best time for both teachers and students, or at least for me. As a student, at least you don't have to like sit there and do nothing and listen passively, and you can finish quick and chill. As a teacher, you can just chill or do other grading. Not that he needs the time. Maybe he fell out with school because he's too smart and he pissed off his teachers who like teaching because of the authority. How did he get this gelato? How did he get the gelato in class? Where did that come from? This kid has gifts. Oh, he stole the teacher's gelato. Now it got personal. He was just holding it under his desk in a cone? This is... behavioral problems are something that strength cannot fix. Oh, he's getting to him. This is interesting. This is getting interesting. This is the purpose of your education, and you did say that. Oh, this disrespect. This disrespect. I also think you wouldn't want that. Well, you could, easily. This is social terrorism. When you lean on people's goodness. And he aced the quiz. He can't even be mad on the basis of his education. This is the thing some students figure out and exploit. It's like people who approach you on the street, speaking of New York, asking for favors, and like the way you interpret that is you're the bad person for not helping. Unfortunately, people who actually need help get lost in this, but the reality is for a lot of people, they're deliberately using your good nature and your good intentions to exert social pressure on you to get things that serve only them. And I think having that concept as a form of defense is kind of important in life because it's pretty wide sweeping. People will do this in relationships all the time as well. People who are willing to exploit your good nature for a win, create a situation where it might be best to overcome that instinct and reserve your good nature. Why should I feel like a bad person for failing an unfair test? But yeah, students figure this out. They separate the fear of harm from certain roles. Big picture, what you're doing is you're leaning on the protection of society to try to damage society. Beyond the obvious, the teachers should never use physical force on students. It's also that they can't. And so the exploitative student can basically do anything they want. And if you go far enough down that hole, the only recourse is just to remove them and let it be someone else's problem. Or ideally to try to get through to them, but that takes two. The most challenging element of my teaching career was when the school in a sense was doing this. They were taking all of these kids, like this student, though none of them had his scholastic ability, and putting them all in one class to isolate them, what they saw as a toxic element, from the rest of the school. And the teacher in charge of them quit, and it became my responsibility. And they knew exactly the situation, and they knew that there really were no lines, or at least the limits of my recourse. And so it was challenging. And I don't think I ever figured out the best answer to this, but one thing I know is the wrong answer is you cannot at any point take it personally or let them have an emotional win over you. You do the same job as best as you can, like you would do for all the other students, and make yourself and your conscience clear so that you can walk away at the end of the semester noble and clean. A lot of teachers get wrecked by this because of that previously mentioned thing of this class is about me and my ego. Some people have their whole worlds fall apart with bad behavior. Also interesting for this teacher because he cares about his popularity. Right, and he exploited that to hell. And even more infuriatingly, he scored an actual victory. What he probably needs is a rock. It's a big question. It's a tough one. Some people just want to see the world burn. What do he wants to be in your class? Yeah, that's the sad thing. Sometimes students get dragged down because of that. Like in that class I just mentioned, some of them were there not for behavioral problems. They were there just because of extreme scholastic challenges. But those poor kids, they had to deal with that. Felt really bad for them. He probably has no friends. I have notes. I have a whole notebook. That's a nice self-awareness. Maybe call him a squid in like a reverse Hunter x Hunter insult. A little bit too excited about this. Someone let this kid down big time, and it's possible he's looking for the limits. He's trying to find something to stand on in a world that's let him down. He's been sleeping on it though. I need to kill your will and spirit, yeah. That does seem like the best way. Try to kill him with hot takoyaki. Or kill him with kindness. That could backfire. Very Jesus of you. Give him the eyebrow treatment while you're at it. But come to think of it, maybe that is the best approach for him, as someone who's sad and lost. Wow. The whole gun. This is great. Actually, this is a really good idea. Show him the limits. Show him where the wall is, or the floor he can stand on. This is low-key some psychological warfare right now. He's covering it with kindness and service, but he's deliberately embarrassing him. Which honestly, I mean, it works. The only thing these kids fear is social embarrassment. Though you gotta be careful with that, obviously. One of the ways I ended up bridging that gap in that class is instead of eating lunch, they would all use their break for basketball, and I started joining them. And that didn't solve every problem, but it definitely made the environment a lot less hostile. I think his approach so far is great, if only in the way that he's not breaking down and crying. And also critically, he's not like standing up there screaming, having some emotional meltdown, and you have to listen to me because I'm the teacher, because they're like way past that. They don't care about that. They've already figured out the game. So it's just being a strong enough figure emotionally, not forcefully, that things can organically be sorted out in terms of what actually matters, which is just people and their lives, character. If you're lucky, the mood of the class, the sentiment of the class can turn around enough so that the disrespect ends up coming back and harming them from their classmates. And however tough they are as teens, that's often the thing they care about the most. You can also use that as a weapon. You can use the other students' love of you or esteem of you as a weapon against those who hate you. Because if the rest of the class is having fun and you're disrupting it, the other kids will turn on you. I'm gonna make you so beautiful. I'll make you so pretty. Are we on the roof? Close enough. Oh no, my crest up. This is true. Here's another tool of the antagonistic student: the teacher's personal life, the teacher's character, the teacher's looks, any insecurity. I mean, I think actually a lot of times that battle is fought along the lines of emotional stability. Because what disruptive people want is to see you fluster emotionally. Just generally speaking, a lot of times people who are very antagonistic are people who feel frustrated by their lack of control and power and haven't made the connection yet that that's kind of in their hands and that there are things they can do to improve it, or they do know and just are not willing to do it. So since there's no way to move up, the only way to do anything or get anywhere or feel any sense of mobility or motion is to take other people down so that you're higher relatively. You know, if you embarrass a teacher, you've suddenly raised your rank, you think you've damaged that role that everyone is sort of taking at face value. You throw the whole thing into question. Even as a student thinking back to like elementary and middle school, the teachers that you have the most respect for are the ones that have a combination of like real personal integrity and strength that isn't hinged on what the students say and do, combined with actual regard for the kids and like warmth when things are going well, even if that warmth is just expressed through like educational attention. I need that to get off of my sick fantasies. Oh god, get away from the ledge. Oh, it actually is happening. I called it. I can't believe I called that an episode ago. Is this all this is? Is this all a plan, or do you actually want someone to come save you? The teacher's like, nah, he can fall. He was a jerk anyway. I don't know what happened. He was just on this tree for some reason, and then he just fell, and he died. Yeah, it's a terrible tragedy. Anyway, getting back to my lesson. This dude has problems, man. I think this is a cry for help. You just jumped off a cliff, my man. This is not okay. He felt he got abandoned. Let down by authority. Makes sense. He actually deeply cared at one point. And deeply believed. He was a real believer. It's the real believers that get the most jaded. How'd he die? Watch him break down in tears. But actually, no, never do that. Let's not. I might not see it. He's relieved that someone actually is good enough to support him. He's gonna be a great student. We should not be rewarding this behavior though, real talk. That was desperately sad.
健康的で爽やかな殺意。もう手入れの必要はなさそうですね。
If you really wanted to like dig into his skin, you could point out to the fact that he seems awfully interested in his education right now. Sure are invested in school. For someone too good for it. Speaking of personal insults, you're broke. Okay, I think we're being a little bit too lighthearted with this like psychopathic, murderous kid with ideations of self-harm. But I think the general heart and spirit is right. There are definitely elements of karma that I feel are relatable and actually think are very positive, if painful. But I think it's good if this happens in a way that you can recover and grow from, and actually is terrible if it never happens in any form. And that is the dissolution of the identity-based structures. The idea that there's a separate class of people where there's your parents, teachers, adults, government, whatever, that by virtue of their title or age or some descriptive variable makes them wise and qualified to do the right thing, and most significantly and most terrifying, to protect you from harm. The truth is, there is no safety net. It's all just humans. Everybody in any role of authority or protection is just as human as you are. They are every bit as much on that spectrum of child that you are. There is nothing intrinsic to them that guarantees they're going to do the right thing, be good people, be knowledgeable in what they're doing, or that the system will always work in your favor and is always just, and so that if you do everything correctly in accordance with the regulations, that no harm will befall you. It's just a fantasy. It's a fantasy we use to ease anxiety, and it's a fantasy we're taught so that we'll defer to it. And of course, that's not the whole story. A lot of people are really capable and wise and do the best they can at what they're doing, but it's not a guarantee. I think everyone has the experience at some point of realizing, wow, my parents are just people. And that can be a really good thing. It can be a really beautiful thing, because once you get through that initial shock and fear, you realize that you have to start being that person for yourself. And in a certain sense, that's the beginning of your life. That maybe even is the beginning of adulthood, that taking back of responsibility from where you've outsourced it previously to the structures that were in place when you were born. But I understand very vividly how getting that lesson from a deep betrayal likely initially pushes you on a path of total opposition to the thing, where you're just really hurt and scared, and so it becomes your enemy. You end up hating those people or institutions. You make the same mistake but in the opposite spectrum, where now it's all just bad and evil, as opposed to where before it was good and wise. So it's the same error. It's still not evaluating the individual circumstances of the thing or situation or people. It's not a free, self-determined role. It's trapped by opposition, and how you start lashing out at the thing, and how part of that actually is you want to go back to the way things were. Potentially part of what you're doing is not trying to destroy the thing, but trying to find how far you have to go to meet limits again, to encounter something bigger than you, stronger than you, that can overpower you, that has the skills to defeat you, because that would be the relief you're seeking. It's like, oh, actually, oh, thank God, there is an authority structure. It's not just chaos. It isn't just a straight drop to the bottom. That being represented here literally. Something will catch me if I fall. It's not all an illusion. And people who really act out, they don't know how to get that naturally. They don't know how to get positive attention or actual goodness and virtue naturally. So they have to force it out of people through antagonism, force people to respond, force people to pay attention to them. That's the optimistic side if it's not just pure hatred. People even do this outside of social situations with things in their lives that are overwhelming to them. So they'll let a situation degress until it's a point where actually it's really dangerous to them, with the subconscious knowledge that at that point they'll have no choice but to face it. Whereas now they can conveniently kind of ignore it and wait for it to get bigger, so it forces them into action because they don't know how to act on their own. And when it comes to social situations or antagonistic students or whatever, lo and behold, a lot of times, if that is what it is, if that's the motivation, those kids can come around really nicely when they actually get the thing they're looking for. Which, you know, as a kid, a teenager, it's perfectly fine to want to feel that there is structure and that people care about you and will look out for you and will not let you fall off the cliff. And so if you don't make the mistake of falling into disgust or taking it as a personal attack, getting overly emotional, basically affirming the student's worst fears that everyone's just a child, then what you get, strangely, is sometimes gratitude for being that person, being maybe the only person in someone's life that can't be destroyed by this particular brand of social terrorism. And that is sometimes followed by respect and even interest. That was a very, very literal physical representation of that phenomenon. I think it was handled really well. I give a high score to the teacher's approach. It combined strength of character, not losing to a children's game, therefore determining there's more to life than just all the childish things he sees, and in that sense not giving him the betrayal he was seeking as affirmation of that belief. Also, the subtle psychological warfare of using social embarrassment without overdoing it, without ridiculing him or being petty, doing it in a constructive way that improved his eyebrows and fingernails, and also not holding any personal grudges. That would be very childish, right? That would confirm what he's testing for. That would be a victory for the student. So that if Karma now decides to try to apply himself productively, we can pick right up there and that can now be rewarded. There's no grudge. It's like, I'm glad we're on the same page. Let's do this. This, I think, definitely the most interesting episode of the first episode trilogy for that deeper psychological dive.